Welcome back to the Abnormals, where we cover the paranormal, supernatural, and everything strange. I'm one of your hosts, Alex.
I am Mark.
And I'm Tristan.
And Tristan is actually our editor for the show, but he's been taking a listen to the show, and he's been really wanting to partake in one of these episodes. Actually, he's probably going to be helping us on a lot of other ones. But Tristan, I'm glad you're here. I know you have a lot to talk about as far as what you've done for your research. So why don't you start off? And what did you cover for this topic?
Yeah, so we're taking a look at myths and mythological creatures surrounding Christmas time, just kind of broadly. Specifically, I looked at Frau Perchta, which is kind of a combination deity out in kind of Eastern Europe. Looks like it's mostly in the Alpine regions of Germany, Austria. There also is a very similar one called Frigga out in Scandinavia. The best way to describe her is the god of domestic cleanliness, I guess is the best way to put that.
Domestic cleanliness?
Yeah, it's really weird. So she has this like dual personality type thing, where there's the good Frau Perchta and then the bad. The good one is called Holly. It's like a winter goddess surrounded like shining or bright nights, the Epiphany Day, January 6th, with when the star was shown down. But anyway, the bad one, which is much more interesting, is obsessed with women getting their flax spun by January 6th, like on their old spinning rooms where they'd have to get everything done for the clothing and everything like that.
Oh,
so
okay.
So if it's not done by January 6th and she notices, the small thing she'll do is she'll come in and burn down your loom, which will obviously burn down your house and everything too. Right? It seems reasonable.
Get your chores done, or I'm gonna burn all your shit down.
See that, and that's the small part that she does. If God forbid your house is messy as well, what she's gonna do is she's gonna sneak into your house, into your bedroom specifically when you're sleeping, cut you open, take out all your guts, throw them onto the side, and then stuff you back with a bunch of straw and rocks and whatever the hell else is laying around, and then sew you back up.
Wait, so this is the same person as, like, they're like one and the same? You said that she can be good or she can be bad?
Yeah, it's kind of a duality type thing. Yeah, exactly. It's just it's Christmas.
Hey, gonna cut you open if your house is dirty because I don't. She's like the OCD serial killer. That like it's like, hey, I'm gonna come off and drop your gifts. Your house is dirty. Well, can't have that. I'm gonna murder everyone and cut you open and fill you full of shit.
Yeah, how does something like that come to be? Like, how does that story? When you did your research, did it say like how this story came to be, or like how this legend or deity came around? Like, what was the purpose behind it?
No, I didn't find much on that because it seems to be one of those older ones that is just kind of generally accepted in a lot of different areas in Eastern Europe. So I think it's like from what I could tell, it seems to be a very much pre-Christianity type thing that kind of got incorporated into more modern myths and kind of evolved over time. It seems to be one of those like children's stories, like to do your chores or someone's going to come murder you in your sleep type of thing that they used to tell, but specifically to women keeping the house nicer. So I think it was one of those kinds of things. So
this is not for the children. This is for the women.
Like, yeah,
it's your wife.
Yeah, that seems to be more the consensus. I mean, it could apply to kids too. I didn't see a whole lot about that, but it seemed to more just be about domestic affairs. And just keeping the house clean, making sure all of your flax is spun. Yeah, it's a little weird. And she kind of looks like the old the plague doctor type of deal, where she has this big metal iron beak dressed in rags, which is the ironic part because she looks like shit. Like, she doesn't look like well dressed up or nice and neat like someone you'd assume would, considering she's judging you for cleaning your house. She just looks all decrepit. She's carrying like a cane. She has a knife that she keeps on her to presumably gut you. It's a pretty creepy looking setup.
Yeah, that's very hypocritical of her. If she's gonna like come around in all these rags and look all beat up, and like what you're saying, she's gonna judge you on if you've gotten your, what was it, your flax spun?
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. So all of your I forget the specific term for it. But yeah, that's just the material you'd use to make blankets or clothes and all that good stuff. And if you have any left over by January 6th, that's where she's going to start burning your house down.
Now, how does this? So it's essentially more of less of Christmas and more of to do with just like the season of like winter almost. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's that entire period between Christmas and January 6th is when she's active. So she's very similar to Krampus, or at least some of her beings that follow her are similar to Krampus, because Krampus will ride around on Christmas Eve specifically and cause chaos. She rides around after Christmas up to January 6th. She'll kind of like fly around as part of this thing called the Wild Hunt, and she has this like army of lost souls is what they called it, and they're a bunch of like demonic looking. They called them Perchten. They visually look like Krampus, and they're just flying around with her. I'm assuming hunting people with dirty houses.
That's really weird. So a lot of what you're talking about is a lot of what I did research on Grayla, the Icelandic witch troll person. They're like, I see some similarities, and I wonder if that's just like a European thing, or if they could be somehow connected. I don't know. That's really interesting.
I would guess they'd be connected because, like I said, there was a bunch of different names for this person. I didn't try to read off most of them because they get very German and a little hard. But there's Perchta, there's Birchta, there's Spinstubenfrau, which means the spinning room lady.
Interesting.
And there's a couple of names. So my guess is it's a pretty old and common legend that's probably all over different parts of Europe and obviously reaching over to Iceland, which would make sense because it was Scandinavians have a very similar thing. So that would be a pretty strong connection over to Iceland then.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And like, I find that like too, like some stories, it's almost like if you think about like Bigfoot, how it's the same creature, but like there's little things that are kind of different about each one and everything like that. I feel like this is kind of, we might run into the same things, or we might hear kind of the same stories with a couple of the topics that are creatures that we're covering and everything like that. I feel like we might run into that.
Well, I did look at something else too, because I was about the end of the rabbit hole I could find on her. I looked up this Killicant Zari was another thing I found. These are much more interesting. They're in Greece. They're these dim-witted goblins that live underground. So they spend all their time trying to saw away the world tree that's under the earth with the intention of bringing down the entire earth and causing the apocalypse, essentially. And on Christmas morning, for some reason, they're allowed to roam the world. And they get distracted and they want to go just have fun and cause some chaos out like on the mainland. And they're allowed to do it for 12 days. So what's more fun is how you like get them to stop. So apparently they're really dumb, like just really dumb. So the best way to do it is to put out some colanders with only 2 holes in them because they can't count past 2. So they're just going to stand there and count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 over and over again for 12 days straight. And they can't count to 3 because if they count to 3, that represents the Holy Trinity, and then they would immediately die. So they can't go that far.
Wouldn't you want to kill them though? Wouldn't you put out calendars with like 3 and be like, world tree's safe now?
I think they physically can't count to 3, if I understand correctly, because their brain just can't interpret.
Oh, they're touched.
Yeah, like they just physically can't do it, was my understanding. But yeah, if they don't get distracted, they'll end up going into your house. They'll put out your fire so you'll freeze. They'll rearrange your furniture, defecate on your food. Seemed a big jump to me.
That's a big jump. It's like, I'm going to put out your fire. I'm going to rearrange your refrigerator. I'm going to shit in all of your food. And that's the goofy one. Like it's like you have like the normal ones with them where they're just like, oh hey, let's rearrange the furniture, and then they're like, oh, there's Steve shitting in the food again, and he's got like that goofy little look on his face, and you're just like, God damn, Steve, stop shitting in the food.
Steve, you take it way too far all the time. All right. Wow.
Yeah, they're weird, and apparently, they worry that if a child is born during those 12 days, they could turn into one of these little demon things. So mothers, to protect their babies, would put their baby's toes in a fire. that's what they would do. Apparently that helps.
That part is true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's old. I would assume that there's at least tales of people doing that, or like it's one of those things where they did something where they warmed the baby's feet and maybe blew up the story over time. Would be at least my guess. But I mean, people back then were crazy as fuck. So who really knows? You could also hang a pig's jawbone over your doorway. That would help. But my absolute favorite one, and I heard about this from a comedy special once where they're talking about what people do I think it was in Madrid during, I think, Halloween. But basically what they do is you have to go find a tree with a male name, because everyone names their trees, and then a female tree with a female name, right? And then you would have to chop them down and then conduct a wedding ceremony between the logs. So they're married. And then burn them in the fireplace. And that apparently also will work.
Now, do you think you have to burn the whole tree, or is it just like you get a couple branches from it and that's like quote unquote burning the tree?
I specifically said you need to make logs out of them and then you marry the logs.
Huh.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, that is a lot. Now, can you do any combination of it? Like, can you just like put your kid's toes in the fire, hang the jawbone, or do you think you have to do all of them?
I mean, I think if you want to be real safe, you do all of them, but that's just me.
Yeah. But
then the
best
best part,
seems like a lot of work.
So then after all this, the Kilikanzari go back underground, only to discover that whole year of work of chopping down that tree, it already healed itself, so it's all pointless, and they start over.
Oh, so it's just
I figured it was something. I figured it was something to do with the world tree. Like they let him out, and it's like, okay, and this is how the world tree heals. So the world tree never crumbles, and
it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
Wow. And now, what country was that?
That's Greece, which I found weird because it clearly connected, to Holy Nights and the Trinity, which means that it had to be, post Christianity, but it feels like a super ancient Greece pagan type of deal, especially since it was talking about the pagan world tree. So I think that's another one of those ones where it was like an ancient myth that then kind of got incorporated into Christian beliefs when it took over that area.
I can't get over that shitting on food.
Yeah, I had to read that like 4 times because the article is like, rearrange the furniture, put out the fire, and then defecate on open containers is specifically how it worded it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of work. I can't get over the fact you got to go chop down a couple trees, marry them, build a fire with them. That's an all-day event. It's not like it's just something you can go up. Because I mean, it's not like they had chainsaws and shit where they could just go outside and be like, "I'm gonna chop down this tree. I got a chainsaw. I'm gonna go fire up the Husqvarna, and I'm gonna just chop down this tree." No, it's like, okay, I gotta go get my axe. Where's my axe? It's out in the shed. That's like half a mile away. So I'm gonna go walk out to the shed. I'm gonna go get my axe. Is it sharp? Nope. Gotta sharpen it.
Why would someone's axe or shed be half a mile away?
Like people back in the day, they were just like, "Oh, I can't build my shed here because that's, if you're in Greece, that's Thermopolis's land. So I gotta go across the creek because apparently his land goes on the creek and my land goes there, but then it goes past the creek. Only Thermopolis's creek is through there, so I gotta build it on the other side." And then, he goes out there, gets his axe, sharpens it. Then he goes out, chops down one tree, and he's like, "Well, now I need to marry this tree. Let's go find a suitable, partner for that." Then he goes, searches, cuts down that other tree. It's an all-day event just to stop some little goblins from shitting in your food.
Well, it does seem a lot easier to just put your baby's feet in the fire than, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I wonder if this is like, I wonder if it's like tradition though. Like how we decorate for Christmas for like the holidays, and sometimes that's like an all-day event where it can like take a couple of hours and everything like that. Or like even when we go chop down a Christmas tree, like I know some families like make that like part of their tradition where they like as a family go in the woods, or they go to a pine tree farm and cut down a tree, and sometimes that takes all day. I wonder if this is something where it's almost the same thing, where it's like, all right, we need to stock up on firewood. Let's find a quote unquote male tree or 2 trees, and then it's just like a bonding thing with a family.
Well, I wonder if it was also a big deal because they said they put the fire out. So I wonder if the goblins came in and they put out the fire between the marriage trees. Did that make the goblins worse?
Mm. I don't think anything can get worse than shitting on food.
I mean, freezing to death might be worse.
Yeah, okay, you got me there.
Just I mean, you can always get more fed. If you freeze to death, it's kind of done. But like, I think it's like you go through all these stupid things, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna be shitting on ancient culture here, but a lot of times, a lot of stuff they did was kind of really redundant and stupid because they were afraid of goblins, coming in and rearranging your furniture. What if the goblins are really practitioners of feng shui and your house flows better? Who knows? But when you see all this stuff, like you think of putting your baby's toes in fire, like who thought that was a great idea? A lot of people, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. Like is there anything though that is there anything that we do nowadays that would be considered like why the heck do we do that?
Like people like 1,000 years from now looking at what we do now.
Yeah.
They're probably going to look at everything we do now like we look at everything that people did 1,000 years ago as backwards, to be honest with you. Hopefully that the technology has progressed, that they feel that what we do now is barbaric and savage. Like one of the things that always stuck with me, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and because of that I hate Star Trek. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you could like both, and I'm like, nope. I come from the hardcore tradition where if you like one, you have to hate the other, which has actually culminated into me punching a guy in the face at a bar because he was talking shit about Star Wars and how Star Trek was better. So I just punched him in the face.
I was gonna say, was he a Trekkie? Was he a?
No, he was a total Trekkie, and when I punched him, I said, "May the force be with you." But anyways, side note off of that. I'm actually wearing a Darth Vader t-shirt right now. It's my pajama shirt. But anyways, when they look at all this, and I remember this Star Trek, I think it was the one with it was the stupid Star Trek movie where they have to get the whales to save the world because apparently some alien spaceship made a giant death machine that used the sound of whales, and because Earth over whaled and killed all the whales, the Earth was going to get destroyed by whales because they had none and they needed whale sounds. Nobody had a recording of the whale to do this. But so they had to go back in time to get whales. That was the premise of the movie. This is why Star Wars, even with some of the shitty Star Wars movies that have come out, is infinitely better than going back in time to get a couple whales to save the world.
I was going to say, they made a movie out of that?
Yeah, I think it's like Star Trek 3.
And it was about whales.
It was about getting whales and going back in time. But regardless of that, there was one scene that stuck out to me, and it was this old lady in the hospital, and it was, the doctor guy who's always like, "Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a scientist." And he's in the hospital, and this lady's like, "Oh God, I need to have my kidneys removed." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "What?" And she's like, "They're gonna take out both of my kidneys." And he's like, "What kind of barbaric and savage land is this?" And he gives her a pill. He's like, "Take this, you'll be fine." And basically the pill rejuvenates her kidneys. And she's like, "He gave me new kidneys with the pill." That has always stuck out to me. And they're 1,000, I don't know how far into the future they are, but that has always stuck out to me. And I'm like, I wish we could do that now, is just take a pill and you get new kidneys.
Well, it's almost like when that's funny that you say that too, because it kind of reminds me of the Mummy episode that we covered when we were talking about mummification, and they thought it was there was no use for the brain or whatever. Yeah. And now we're like, that is that's where everything happens, is the brain. But they're like, nah, the heart, or the knowledge is in the heart and everything like that. So
I mean,
yeah,
that
I'm sure
makes sense though. And I said that during the Mummy episode, because it's they knew your brain was there, and they had they were like, "Oh, your brain, we don't know what that does, but your heart pumps You can feel it. It's in your chest. If you lose that or get stabbed there, you're done. Like, they knew that the heart was super important, and it is super important. I mean, granted, you also need your brain, but
what did we cover like what they thought the brain did? Because I know they said that like they thought it didn't serve a purpose, but did they have like maybe like some idea? I know this is getting way off subject of Christmas. We will, to all the listeners out there, we will get back to Christmas stuff, but I am curious about this now. When they were doing mummifications, or back in the day, what did they think the brain was used for, or what was it for? I guess I don't know.
I don't know. They just kind of shoved that thing up your nose though to take it out. So they really didn't care too much about it. They went through great lengths to get the heart out preserved, but the brain was just kind of like, and here we go.
Yeah, they say they did not think much of the brain. That's about as specific as I'm finding.
That's what I'm finding.
It's just like they created this whole elaborate setup for the organs, and they got to the brain, and they just kind of ran out of ideas. You don't need that.
You don't need that one.
All right. Well, let's see here. Well, what I am finding, just like snippets, real quick, is that the Greeks were the first to begin investigating the brain as the center of consciousness and physical function around 700 BCE. So there we go. There's my answer.
It always seems like the Greeks were the one that started actually doing a lot of the stuff that like led to modern thought. And you always kind of get taught that it was like everybody before the Greeks were kind of like, oh yeah, if you do this, but then we just heard about the Greeks with these goblins and putting babies' toes in fire. And the Spartans who would be like, oh, look at this baby. Oh, this one's got, this one's arm's a little bit longer than the other one. Time to throw it off a cliff, like.
Yeah.
And the baby, it was just a weird, like, just the way the baby was in the womb, and the baby totally would have been fine, after a couple months of just, living. And they're just like, nope, time to throw it up. This one has jaundice, throw it off the cliff. Like, just shit like that. And it's like, oh, here's philosophy and also barbarism.
Yeah, and what was it? Oh, no, I'm thinking of Rome was for the water irrigation system, like with
oh yeah, the aqueducts. I mean, Rome had running water. They had like a pipe system and a toilet system.
Yep.
The problem with Rome though is that they used lead for everything because it made everything sweet. They're like, oh, you want to make your wine sweet? Put it in those lead jugs, and it'll kind of just sit over time, and it'll make the wine super sweet. Oh, you need the food's not good? Here, sprinkle some lead in there. That'll make it sweet. Want to have an abortion? Eat all this lead. You'll be fine. Baby will be gone. Which Rome actually knew how to do that because it was vitamin A. If you have too much vitamin A during like the first trimester, your body will just get rid of anything.
Really?
Yeah, and Rome knew about that, so they would say, "Here, eat this liver. Eat 2 livers every day, and if you don't want the pregnancy, you'll be fine."
That's true because liver is what's the highest like meat content of vitamin A? Like if you're not supposed to eat very much liver.
No, you're not. Like if you eat a polar bear liver, you'll die from too much vitamin A.
Yeah.
So, the Eskimos were like, "Hey, don't eat all that liver. You'll die, and just eat half of it."
Because there was some guy named Steve who ate entire liver.
Yep, and Steve just dropped dead, and that goes back to like back when we were talking about like ancient people. Like, who was the guy who was the food tester? Like, Steve, go eat that berry. Nope. Yeah. Don't eat those berries. Steve just died.
Yep. And then, all right. So, Tristan, as far as like who you covered too, is there any like real stories or like anything talking about like claims of seeing or like anyone going out and looking for this? Who can you pronounce the name again?
For the Kila Kenzari or Frau Perchta?
Frau perched.
Yes. I didn't find anything about anyone practically seeing them because it's more of like a fairy tale type deal, which are pretty common in that region of the world. It's possible. That's definitely not something I looked into. But if there is anyone that did, I mean, you can realistically assume both of these would fall under. I mean, Perchta would probably be just a general ghost at that point, I would assume, right? So if you're running into anything like that, it'd probably be some sort of soul or something from a long time ago. But there's been nothing I saw about people actually practically trying to find them. It really just seems to be one of those stories that they would tell you just to freak you out, because that's what everyone loves during Christmas.
Stories that freak people out.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because that's almost like what Santa is. Like when we talk about getting presents and everything like that as a kid. At least I know this is how it worked in my family. It was like as soon as it hit December, that's when my parents would start saying, you better not be naughty during Christmas. Now, granted, like they never said like Santa will gouge your guts out or anything like that, but like, or you're gonna get coal. So there was like a consequence and everything like that. So
I'm just saying, if Santa would have, gutted you, you probably would have been a lot nicer of a kid, though, right?
yeah. I'm sure.
Just motivation.
I'm sure that would be the case.
Or you never would go or staying awake on Christmas would have been a completely different experience. You just
yeah,
a knife under your sheets. Like, is he coming? Is Santa coming?
Yeah, you're staying awake because you're scared. You're not anticipating getting presents.
Yeah, I took that loaf of bread and I wasn't supposed to. I got to fight Santa to the death tonight. Come here, you fat man. We're doing this. Man, that's an awesome Home Alone movie. It's Kevin McAllister versus Evil Santa.
Ooh, that would be a good movie. I'd watch it.
I gotta protect my home from Santa, and then it's just Kevin McAllister kicking the dog shit out of Santa the entire night.
Speaking of, did you guys know that they came out with a new Home Alone movie?
I heard they're remaking it or something.
So I'm not sure. I didn't watch it because I watched a review for it, and it looks horrible. Now, this is no way like I'm not reviewing the movie. This is not what the channel's for. But since we're on the topic of Home Alone, it looks like the worst Halloween. Like I know the first two are great. The third one, and then like I think there's like 5, but this one I think is 6. And this one is just horrible. Now I don't know if this is like a reboot of it, but watching the review of it, it's Kevin or whoever the main character is thinks that these adults are out to like kidnap, but the two adults, like what would you call it, the antagonists of them, is it the antagonists or the I feel like an idiot. Antagonists are the bad guys.
Yeah, you have the protagonist who's the main
the
character.
good guy.
Yeah, and
the antagonists in this movie think that the Kevin McAllister, I don't know, again, I don't know if it's Kevin, took one of their dolls or whatever that like is worth a lot of money. So they're essentially just going over and taking back what he stole and everything like that. And then he just fucks them up the entire movie. It just like, it looks horrible. Like Kevin is not like, you felt bad for Kevin in the first movie and everything like that. Like you had sympathy for him, like everything like this. This movie, he's just a dick. Like you're not rooting for him. You're rooting for the
bad guys kill a small child. You're like, just end this kid. Just
that's
end
what
it.
Yeah. But I don't think I'm gonna watch the new Home Alone movie. But if it was Santa versus Kevin McAllister, the original, I'd watch it.
But it's got to be Evil Santa coming out with they get like The Rock to play Santa, just this jack dude who's like, have you been naughty or nice? Do you smell what I'm cooking? He's gonna rock bottom him and then cut him open and fill him with hay and rocks and be like, there you go, Merry Christmas.
Would it be
naughty list? Would
it be better if it was Krampus and not Santa?
I would just like to see Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
He played a tooth fairy. I know that much.
Yeah. And I want like old school, not like him now that he's like movie star. So he doesn't I want him doing like the eyebrow cock and him coming out with like, The Rock persona and just being like,
So when he had
People's
hair.
champion. Yeah, the people's champion. Like he does the
Yeah.
people's elbow to Kevin McAllister. Kicks that leg out and does that little shimmy and drops it on him. And then Kevin's just like dying.
But
The evil Santaverse Kevin McAllister. There's the movie.
Yep. So if we have anyone that makes movies or is a producer, there's your next idea. We just want a little bit of credit. Just throw a little bit of Abby Normal shout out there.
Just little fun Christmas movie. That Home Alone movie. That sounds terrible though. Like, that sucks.
Yeah.
Why do they have to remake stuff but make it suck? Like they've remade a couple things that I thought was actually pretty good. But this one, they're just remaking stuff now and it just sucks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate and everything. But to get kind of back on track and everything like that, Grayla, she's a lot like what you were talking about, Tristan. So Grayla is an Icelandic witch troll. Now it depends on which story you read. She's a troll in some, but she has like the features of a witch, but she's as big as a troll, I guess. So I guess that's where I guess people are confused, or I guess like, I don't know. She's just a big witch. She's mentioned. She's first mentioned in like 13th century, and there's like a little poem or story tale that goes like, it goes, down comes Grayla from the outer fields with 40 tails on a bag on her back, a sword in her hand, coming to carve out of the children who cry for meat during Lent. So that's like, she was kind of around Lent time and everything like that, but she didn't get associated with Christmas. There's two stories. Like it's weird because the Icelandic thing, what I was reading, there's a couple of stories that kind of intertwine with each other, and because of what's called the Yule lads, this is how she gets incorporated into Christmas. So the Yule lads, depending on what story you read, she gave birth to these 13 children who caused mischief during the holidays. Now, if you want me to read all 13, I will. But just to name a few, there's Bowl Liquor, Dorm Slammer. Yeah, Bowl Liquor. So hiding under the bed and stealing bowls from people that they put down. There's Window Peeper that peeks at people and searches of things to steal. Meat Hook. That's pretty messed up. That has like hooks for hands and everything like that. That almost seems like something from Dota 2.
It seems like it's like all the villains from the 300 movie. This is Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder made this thing up long ago, and now it's just hanging out.
Right? So how they got kind of intertwined was like with the Yule lads. They went from like almost what we were saying is like how they're pretty grotesque and they seem pretty bad. Well, since the 13th century, they've gotten a little bit more light, and rather than being more mischievous, they're more of like kind of ditzy and everything like that, and they're more kind of like their personalities are like, I guess, more bubbly and everything like that. So again, depending on what story you read, Grayla gave birth to these 13 children. Now, if you're naughty during Christmas, Grayla gave birth to these will come and visit you. And kind of like what Tristan was saying, she feeds on human flesh and will like, that's what she desires, is the human flesh, and eats humans and everything like that. She was married at one point. Again, depending on what story you read, she ate her husband, and then in another story, her 13 kids were so hungry that she chopped up her husband and then fed him to her kids. And then because of this, that's how they turned into these evil creatures and everything like that. So Grayla is pretty heavy duty. She's nothing to mess around with. So that's why I wanted to cover her. She's pretty out there. And I had never heard of her until I did some research into some mythical creatures around Christmas time. I find that really interesting. And the thing about what I found fascinating too is that the Icelandic people really believe in her, because there's a statistic out there saying that there's 54% of all Icelandic people still believe in elves. So it wouldn't surprise me if they believe that Grayla is real.
Wait, so Icelandic people are big firm believer of elves just walking out there in the Icelandic countryside just doing mischief, right?
Yeah.
That's
So it wouldn't put me past it wouldn't surprise me if they actually thought that Grayla was real, because and that's why I asked you, Tristan, was because there's no hard evidence, but there is stories of people going out and trying to find Grayla and they never return. And the story goes like, okay, because they went out there, she found them, and then she ate them because she feeds on human flesh. So
that sounds more like just Icelanders they're beasts, man. I don't give a shit. That's probably why. This like the Perchta one. I mean, it's out just in Austria and Germany and everything. And it's just kind of like an old tale. I doubt anyone cared to go looking for them. But yeah, if you're in a remote island separated from the rest of the world, I mean, I could see them doing something like that. And wasn't it like the Irish as well? They believed fairies for a long time, or there's still I think a high population that does. I think it's just that maybe Celtic remnants from them versus like more Austria and Switzerland and all that area. It's Celtic roots have been so long removed since the BC days. I think like 100 or 200 BC is when they really started. There's a whole thing on the Celtic Holocaust about how all those people were just massacred in Gaul and Germany about 2,000 years ago. But like in Iceland and in Ireland, they're still there.
No, the Celtic. That was Julius Caesar's big claim to fame.
Yep.
The Celts are actually from northern, like Austria, where like Czechoslovakia is today. That was like Bohemia. Everybody knows Bohemia back from like European times, like that big, the Holy Roman Empire stuff. Bohemia literally got its name because it translates to a land of the boy, like Boii, which was one of the 3 Celtic tribes that Julius Caesar pushed out of northern, like Italy, Austria. And because there were 3 tribes, one of them went west and like apparently just destroyed everything, and then ended up like in like England, France, and all of that. And that was the big rise of the Celtic traditions there. And then the one tribe got wiped out completely by Caesar in Rome. And then the boy tribe went east, and they ended up in like the Marcomanni and the Quadi and the Sarmatian lands. And the boy tribe got there. They all looked at each other like, "Hey, we all hate Rome, right? We don't want to fight because we're going to kill each other if we fight, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." And the Marcomanni were like, why don't you just set up camp over here, and you could live here, and we'll just live together, and we'll just kind of become the same people after a while." And that's how Bohemia got its name, because it literally translates to land of the boy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I did all that stuff because I found out I was Bohemian, and I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" And then I started researching. I'm like, "This is a huge rabbit hole."
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I heard the Celtic thing, and I was like, "Dude, there we go."
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all the information that I could find on Grayla and everything like that. I found it interesting, because I had never heard of her till, like I said, I was doing the research and everything like that. And I find it really cool that all of these different countries have these different traditions around like this holiday. Because I mean, like until now, and like even doing the show, it's I don't know. It's just I never went out and actually did that research and everything like that to see how different. Because like I know in Japan, this is kind of off topic, but in Japan during Christmas, one of their traditions. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. I mean, you might know this, but is they like a big thing is to like go get KFC during Christmas.
No, that's you get white cake.
What?
You get
White
KFC,
cake?
Yeah, white cake. They have this like white cake, and that they sell at the KFC, and you get the KFC and this white cake, and it's just like, cake, like vanilla cake with like that white frosting on top, and it's
Yeah.
it's all the rage. But yeah, no, KFC is huge in Christmas on Japan.
And that's I find that just so interesting too, like how there's all of these different things going around during the same period of Christmas and everything like that going around in the world. And I don't know, just not doing that research until now. So I wanted to cover Grayla, but I find it interesting too that it's similar to the one that Tristan was covering too, like how she chops, like takes out all the organs and stuffs it with like straw and rocks and everything like that. That's messed up.
I don't get the ancient culture's obsession with disemboweling. That just seems really common.
Well, it seems like it wasn't that big of a deal back then.
Yeah, it's just a little disembowelment.
Yeah. Well, like think about the gladiators and everything like that. That was an event within itself. Like no one that wasn't bad.
Watching people get disemboweled was an event at itself. I mean, that was like the big end all torture device back then. Like,
well, I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say it's probably absolutely terrifying because I mean it's not like today where we just like when we execute somebody, it's usually hopefully like humanely and usually we're executing people who are bad, but I mean at the same time like we just kind of do it where it's like zip zip zip, you're done. Back then it was like look at Braveheart, like everybody came, they got some bread, they cheered, they watched people get put on the rack, they watch people get disemboweled. That was a fun time. That was your Sunday activity for the day.
Right.
You got to throw moldy loaves of bread. You got to throw really shitty lettuce at them. It was a good time. And then you watch them get horrifically murdered to death.
Yeah, right. And I don't want to stay on this topic too long, but like the like it still happens today though, where it's like it's almost in like some parts of the world, like executions or like putting someone to death in front of public is like that's a huge thing, and like people are like, all right, let's go watch that. Because I know in North Korea, I think it was I read about this. It was not too long ago where that just happened, where public execution. It's terrible. I'm glad we don't do that now so much. But yeah, I think it wasn't. I think the reason why it's in so many old stories is again. It was just practice back then. It wasn't
a bunch of people die like that. I guess a little story like some of these aren't going to scare you that much. If you've actually witnessed a guy get disemboweled, then you're not really going to fret too much about some story.
Well, think about like how like just like TV within itself. Like you can't show any gore on TV. You can't show any of that stuff back in. Kids were seeing that, so it wasn't a big deal. But now there's a lot of restrictions on what is okay for the public to see and everything. So, and Mark, what did you cover?
Okay, so for me, this was a fun time because I am a big fan of The Office, and Bell Schnickel always stuck out to me. Like I used to remember Jim going, "I want to see this Bell Pickle guy." Like, Bell Pickle. Yeah, like who's this Bell Pickle? And Dwight came dressed one day as Belschnickel, and I was like, "What the shit is this?" And apparently, Belschnickel is a real thing. He's basically this like kind of offshoot of Santa Claus, which a lot of people believe was originated from the German myth Knecht Ruprecht. I don't know. I can't speak German. My grandfather's rolling over in his grave right now.
No. It's been said before. Common practice here on the Abbey Normals. We cannot pronounce shit.
Yeah. No, but like my grandpa actually went to Germany every year to visit our family there. He spoke German, so like
okay, yes,
I should be able to pronounce this, but I can't because But anyway, so it's a super German name, and this Knecht Rupert was I'm giving like a French accent to it too. That's the worst part about it too. Is that it comes from northern Germany, and he was a servant of Saint Nicholas. And however, Belschnickel is not a part of Saint Nicholas. Belschnickel originated in the Palatinate region, and I don't know if I know there's a Palestine, but this is like Palatinate region, and people brought this from Germany, specifically from like German immigration from Germany to Pennsylvania. And Dutch Pennsylvania, Belsnickel is a huge thing. And Belsnickel is basically kind of like a version of Santa Claus, where he does come, and Belsnickel, people dress up as Belsnickel, and they come and they check up on the behavior of children to see if they were good or bad. And then you kind of get, judged by Belsnickel, and he, either, beats the shit out of you or he gives you candy.
What is with, again, this is like,
carries around a giant stick and he's like, are you good or bad? Here's some candy. You were bad. I'm going to beat the ever living shit out of you. But for me, like,
right, quick side note, Mark, how old is Belsnickel, like, as far as like the story?
They say probably like the 17th century.
Okay.
That's 1600s.
Okay.
And one of the things that I think is kind of crazy about Belsnickel is that Belsnickel, they don't attribute a gender to Belsnickel. They say it is a person who wears, feminine clothing a lot of times. Like, it's not like it's like Saint Nick, who we get very clearly is wearing these clothing, but Belsnickel, they say, will wear like feminine clothing but has very masculine actions. So Belsnickel can be portrayed by anyone, really, because Belsnickel is kind of like everyone or anyone. It's not like a set person where, Saint Nick, we have Saint Nicholas, but we have, Belsnickel, who's just kind of someone who shows up and wears, female garb, but acts, masculine. Yeah, but it's also like, and a lot of people also think that it may be a woman. Belsnickel may be a woman, but acts more masculine. It's a weird thing, but people just love Belsnickel, so it's just it's a weird thing, and I think that kind of attributes to the fact that anybody could be Belsnickel, and I think that's something that's kind of unique to this whole thing, is that it's usually this dude or woman. This one's kind of like it could be anybody.
What is it, because Belsnickel would beat, that gives Belsnickel the masculine like ability, or like the masculine look, I guess, or not look.
I don't know.
I mean,
if you grew up in a German home, they my dad talks about his grandmother still as just being terrified of her. So and they were from Germany, so my great grandmother, but apparently she was a cold woman.
yeah.
And I mean, I think, as a kid, especially back in those days, anybody beat the shit out of you. Your mom, your dad. I mean, you just got the shit beat out of you constantly. There's no good. None of our grandparents have fun stories of not getting the shit beat out of them, because that was just a common practice back in those days. Like, the kids acted up, go beat the shit out of them for a while and just lock them in the basement and see how they turn out.
You guys know the guy Dan Carlin, right? You heard of him?
Yeah.
He wrote a book about like the end of the world and a bunch of stuff like that, just nuclear holocaust, near misses, stuff like that. He did one of like the Bronze Age collapse, but there's a whole chapter about how for almost all of entire human history, every child by modern standards suffered from child abuse.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it.
Today we look at anybody, even within the last 100 years ago, during the early 1900s, every child on the planet, rich or poor, would fall under the veil of child abuse, but they all just kind of, it was normal, so no one really thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, they would beat the shit out of kids, and I think that's a common theme with like all the Santa Claus, is that like Belsnickel literally beats the shit out of you.
At least he doesn't disembowel them.
No. He doesn't disembowel them.
So out of all of them, I'm cool with Belsnickel. I could deal with that.
Well,
is there more to Belsnickel that you're not telling us?
Oh, there is more to Belschnickel. So it's not Belschnickel so much, but Belschnickel has a little follower.
Uh-oh.
His name is Zwarte Piet.
Oh, geez.
And
is this what? Oh, you were telling me about this.
Yeah,
God, yeah.
Zwarte Piet, which is actually a common theme throughout all of the Santa Clauses. Like Saint Nick has a Zwarte Piet, and that literally translates to Black Pete. Black Pete is a small Moorish boy, who is depicted as a black person. And he is basically a slave for Belschnickel, St. Nicholas, all of these people, and he just follows them around and does their bidding.
Wait, you're saying Santa? All right,
Santa. The elves were not elves. The original story for Santa Claus is that Santa would take small Moorish children who were bad and force them to work in his shop to make toys for a set amount of time. So Santa, like China, was taking children, slave labor, to make the toys and iPhones.
Oh my gosh. I'm looking up the story of Christmas elves.
It gets better, though. People still today dress up in certain countries as Zwarte Piet.
Which country?
Full blackface and all.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, and they just apparently this last year in 2020 have started making Zwarte Piet purple instead of blackface, because their public outcry gets worse and worse every year to be like, we can't keep dressing up like Zwarte Piet and thinking it's okay. And most of the Dutch countries are like, nope, it's fine.
It's fine? No, it's not fine.
I think they did a poll a couple of years ago, and it was 74% of people were like, no, we don't see an issue with this. It's for Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So Zwarte Piet fascinates me because it's basically, so you got this enslaved little boy who's a Moorish boy, and he basically he goes with Sinterklaas, he goes with Saint Nick, he goes with Belschnickel, and he's dressed in this really more they say it's the traditional Moorish outfit for the time, and he's their servant, he's their slave, he's their sidekick, and he goes around, and if someone's bad, Zwarte Piet will come and take you. If you're really bad, and then you have the elves, there's this crazy stuff that's involved with all these Saint Nick thing, and I get why they changed it to elves. We can't have Santa taking Moorish children and making them slaves to build the toys. But the best part is that I think it's not even so much Moorish children. It's basically Spain. Every time they're like, oh, it's Moorish from Spain. It's everybody in Central Europe hated Spain. And they just wanted to shit on Spain. So they made Zwarte Piet to shit on Spain. Fuck those Spanish people. We're gonna take this little kid, and he's gonna vanish, and he's gonna be the one we get to shit on.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, there's some indication that that the blackface for Zwarte Piet isn't so much about the Moorish thing, but people would paint their faces black during the winter solstice. During the winter solstice rituals, showing the quicker night, the death and portion of the cycle, because there is winter comes, kills everything in these regions, and then spring, everything comes back to life. So they think that the blackface wasn't so much to be pointed towards anyone's race, that the actual painted face black was more to signify the rituals for the winter solstice back then. And then it just kind of became the Moorish thing because people didn't like Spain at the time. And they kind of did this to more so poke at Spain.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I'm looking up I'm looking up pictures of Belschnickel online, and it has his face like kind of like it almost looks like a lot of people like just put like dirt and everything like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he,
he's dirty. He has like a chimney sweep thing. He
well,
looks like
yeah,
a homeless guy who would break into your house and instead of, stealing your stuff,
and
he,
that's yeah.
gives you candy.
Could that be it too? Where it's like it's not necessarily they're trying to do blackface, but like it's
No, no,
because of
not
the
Belschnickel. Not
yeah,
Belschnickel. You need to look up Zwarte Piet because
Zorta
Zwarte Piet,
Pete.
yeah, it's ZWARTEPIET.
Zorta Pete.
That one, Belschnickel just looks like a dirty person, like a chimney sweep or something along those lines. Zwarte Piet is very clearly blackface.
Yeah, that's not subtle at all.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. That's I can't believe they do. That's crazy.
it's not just like one person. Like, you'll find pictures of hundreds of people just doing this, and like I guess it's a product of time or whatever. But like, even today, I look at this and I'm like, I mean, who thought this was okay?
Yeah. Now, could it be that they were just messing with coal? That's
No,
why
no,
they
no.
no?
I mean, it's very clearly that he was a Moorish kid. Like,
Yeah.
and they dress him up in the Moorish attire too. Like, it's very much like, nope, this is it. Like,
Because it sounds like, if I'm hearing it correctly, it would be like the kids, they have to worry about getting their ass beat, but the Moorish kids have to worry about getting abducted because, I mean, it sounds like they thought of them less than human from that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
if you're listening to the show again, to spell Zortapete, SWARTEPIET. And this is pretty insane. I'm looking at some pictures on Google right now, and like you were saying, Mark, it's just a sea of people doing this. And like you were saying, like times have changed. Can you not see how this is not right?
it's offensive, you know?
Yeah.
And
Like
I
holy
mean, the legend
cow.
is literally like traditionally, like I'm just looking at, just reading it right now. Traditionally, Zorta Pete's face is said to be black because he is a Moor from Spain.
Okay. All right. Then yeah, it's not because he's messing with coals or anything like that. Holy cow.
Yeah, and I mean, he comes from Spain, so they did this, and they think it was just because of like a lot of the issues with Spain during that time, during the 16th century, the 1600s. Which would be, the 16th century would be the 1500s. You have the discovery of the New World, all the gold coming in from there. Spain was one of the richest nations in the world at that point with all the gold they had. And, a lot of people were pissed about that. And there was a lot of Spanish hostility back then. So they were like, screw this. Let's find a way to really shit on Spain.
Yeah. Wow,
And
that's insane.
yeah, and I just like, the fact that, Santa or Sinterklaas, Saint Nicholas, like the whole myth of him basically taking, Moorish children and making them work in his workshop. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, that just puts a damper on my Christmas now, knowing that like the elves were like what the story behind it. Like, holy cow.
Yeah. It's
That's crazy.
I mean, they changed it though. Now it's just elves who are forced to work slave labor, and apparently the elves love it though. So, you know,
Yeah, right.
uh and they also think that a lot of this stuff for the Spain stuff, because this is where you have like, the Protestant revolutions are coming, against the Roman Catholic stuff in Spain, and a lot of this stuff, kind of became Santa Claus because of that, because in the 16th, 17th centuries, you have, I mean, the Protestants basically outlawed Saint Nick. And they
Mhm.
were like, you can't do that. Or then you have, Martin Luther, who wanted to be like, no, 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 Saint Nicholas isn't real because it takes away from Jesus and, this and that. And we can't have that. They can't have a sainthood or anything along those lines because it takes away from that. And I think, Santa Claus started became this weird thing is because during that time period, you have, people who were like, no, I want to worship this, or, I like the idea of, Saint Nicholas, but then you have all this Reformation stuff happening. So it kind of becomes this weird thing where Santa goes into limbo, but then, Spain being one of the firmly, Christian nations still kept Santa Claus. So, and Saint Nicholas, so you could see why a lot of this stuff is all of a sudden Moorish children who come from Spain. And,
Mhm.
and it's basically saying, oh, it's because, Saint Nicholas is from Spain now because that's the only place he can live with all these reformations happening. And then it just turned into a jolly fat man who, has elves and makes presents because a lot of that, past hostility towards what this actually is meaning disappeared and people just kind of were like, hey, it's just Santa Claus now.
Yeah, and I'm reading right here. This is from the elfcrazy.com that um, Christmas in the mid 1800s when they became is when the elves became Santa helpers. So Christmas celebrations were gathering popularity, and Scandinavian writers penned that elves' roles as they knew it today. So good-hearted fairy-like helpers of Santa Claus that are sometimes mischievous. So it seems like around the 1800s is kind of when things shift to like where their appearance and maybe like their purpose, and I mean not their purpose, but just kind of like they were more like elves rather than actual people and everything like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, I think it's interesting that, we talk it, Santa almost got basically taken out. Basically, Spain was the reason why he still exists
Mhm.
because during all the Reformation stuff in Europe, they were trying to get rid of Saint Nicholas and Santa Claus and all of that because they kind of viewed it as, Catholic ideology. And
Yeah.
they were trying to get rid of all of that. And if it's ironic that, all the stuff we talk about, how people were shitting on Spain, it was Spain was actually kind of the reason St. Nicholas even survived.
Mhm. Well, thank goodness.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
because I mean,
Christmas. I love Christmas.
a lot of people love Christmas. It's just that time of year, and I mean, even if you're not, Catholic, Christian, or anything, people still do Christmas stuff because it's a fun holiday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rooted in pagan ideology, like, the Christmas trees, the wreaths, and everything. That was basically what Constantine, did to try to convert the pagan tribes of Northern Europe into Christianity when he was spreading it during the Roman time. That's
Mhm.
why we have Christmas trees, Christmas wreaths. It's all just ideology. Like Easter egg hunts are, the pagan traditions for like the equinox and everything. Like everything we do today are rooted in all of that in order to try to convert people. Like my one of the favorite stories I learned was in one of my Latin American history classes was our teacher said, for centuries the Spanish were trying to convert, the Mexican people to Christianity, and it wasn't working. And it just they would refuse to convert to Christianity, and it was the Jesuits because it was God's Marines because the Jesuits follow the black robe. And I was
Mhm.
like, so basically, whenever I hear the Jesuits, I always think Darth Vader's their leader because I'm like, it's just a dude in a black robe. And but the Jesuits go to there and they actually took time to sit with the Mexican people and were like, oh wait, so all your gods, your main gods, are matriarchal. So they're
Yeah.
all women. They're like, have we ever told you about Mary? And they're like, go on. And that's how they converted all of Mexico. And that's why, Santa Maria is so popular there is because, of that thing. But it's, to me, it's a kind of a fascinating story about how religion is kind of spread and, conversion happens. And,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just, it's one of those things where, you have these traditions and then how they evolve over time and how they're spread and everything. And Christmas, though, is one of those holidays where it's like Halloween. Like we talk about that with the Halloween episode. It's for you don't have to be of that faith to do it. Everybody can do it in America because we're not doing the traditional, I guess, sense of it. It's like, if you want to put up a Christmas tree, anybody can put up a Christmas tree. No one's offended by that. Like, and if they are, go fuck themselves. Like, I get it. Like, I don't put up a menorah because I'm not Jewish, and I get it. The menorah has way more significance than a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like, the menorah is actually something signifying something. The Christmas tree is literally like, hey, it's the winter solstice.
Is there anything as far as like traditions that either one of you guys do that you may not understand as far as like a family that you guys have always done that you're not sure where it came from? Because I actually have one in the back of my head that I'll explain after either one of you go.
For myself, we always did a pretty traditional. I mean, I came from a small family because all of our family was spread out, and I was an only child. So I mean, all of our Christmas stuff was pretty tame. Like we did the Christmas tree, opened Christmas presents. I did the thing where I was allowed to open one present on Christmas Eve from my parents because, I was impatient as a kid. But I mean, other than that, the typical is just Santa Claus, waiting, trying to stay up, laying out cookies and stuff and all that good stuff.
Okay. Tristan, what about you? Does your family do anything as far as like traditions that you're not sure or like they've always done?
Not really. I mean, it's pretty standard stuff, just getting together with the family. My family always liked doing jokes for gifts, or like, so not like joke gifts, but they used to like, whatever your main gift is, they're going to give you a bunch of other stuff and pretend that you didn't get it, just to watch you get pissed off when you discover it in a closet like 2 days later.
Okay.
They do that kind of stuff a lot. Like most of my bigger gifts, they do that, especially when I was a kid, because they just loved to watch me get pissed off about it. Because you'd ask for something, you get a bunch of other stuff, and it's like, well, this is cool, but where's the thing that I asked for? And then you find it in your closet later.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that's just because my parents like to mess with us. I don't think there's any real tradition to that.
There is a game that my family plays. It's called the stealing game. I don't know if either one of you've heard of it. And what it is that like the gifts. So the whole entire family, the gifts really don't matter. They can be good gifts, they can be bad gifts. Like it can be just a roll of toilet paper with like money stashed in like the inside of it. It could literally just be like a spatula. But like that's something that we do as a family, as far as like after we get done eating on the 25th or whatever, we'll bring in all these presents. Like each person like wraps like 4 or 5. So there's all these just random presents in there. And you go around you sit around in a circle and you roll this dice. And if you get a pair, you get to take a present from the middle. Now you can play either like turns around, like the number of times. And I have no idea where this started in my family, or if there's like any other family or anybody else plays this game. But like my family, I think I've heard of like one other family playing this game, and I'm really interested to see if like there's any origins behind this game or whatever. Have either one of you heard of this?
Sounds like the white elephant.
Sounds like white elephant.
It's just like,
what's white elephant?
It's like a, gosh, what's the other name for it? But it's basically where you just try to steal the gifts from each other to get the best gift possible.
Is that so my family's just messed up and we call it something completely different. It's already something that's made up.
There's a bunch of names for it. I've heard at least 4 or 5 different ones, but it's a fairly common
it's
tradition.
like everybody gets a gift and then you open it, and it's like then the person that comes after you can choose to take your gift or open theirs.
It was on The Office.
Yeah, that was the Belschnickel episode. But yeah, it's like you literally like.
No way, was it?
Yeah. Wait, no, it wasn't the Belschnickel episode. It was the one where Mike the
teapot that is.
Yeah, right? Like they basically like, oh, we're gonna give everybody like a $20 limit for thing for Christmas.
He gets the fucking iPod.
And Michael buys Ryan a fucking iPod, and everyone's like, "Michael, that's like $500." He's like, "Well," and that's when they find out Michael got a huge bonus for firing people.
Oh.
But then everybody's fighting over the iPod, and it's like, and so they just keep stealing the iPod from everybody else, and everyone's like, "This is just terrible, Michael. This is terrible Christmas." But it's not, so it just sounds like though that was a family tradition for you.
Yeah, and I'm reading a little bit about now too, and it seems like it's something that like Western culture came up with during the 1900s. Now I'll do some more research into it later on and everything like that, but I wonder if it's something where it's, I don't know, because of the depression around that time and just like how, I don't know, just like, I don't know. I will look into it and I will get back to everyone with this white elephant game, or as our family calls it, the stealing game. Ugh.
I mean, you guys call it the stealing game. You didn't get an idea that it might be really terrible?
I don't know. As a kid, it didn't dawn on me.
Come on, man. Like, you call it the stealing game.
I was
Merry Christmas. I'm stealing your shit.
As a kid, the premise of Christmas is to get presents. You know, like that's all you think about. Now, as an adult, I think I'm happy with family. Like just sitting around with family and everything like that's more to me than presents. I'm not trying to get sentimental, but as a kid, I didn't see anything wrong with the stealing game.
Oh no! As a kid, fuck your family. You want your presents. Yeah. As you get older, like, is there a thought in my mind that my son, who's 7, would just flat out be like, if I'm like, okay, you can have all your presents, but you won't see Daddy for a month. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Without a doubt, he'd be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. See you next month.
To come bring us all back. Now I know we each kind of picked our own character for the show and everything like that. I know Tristan, you said you went down kind of a rabbit hole with the Grease Dorbs that shit on food. Does anyone have any other characters that they want to bring up? Now I know Krampus was brought up, but I didn't want to cover Krampus because I know there's a million things out of this. So I wanted to kind of go off the wall. But does anyone have anything else as far as characters they want to bring up?
Not for me. I think we pretty much, went down the chimney on this one.
I would agree. I would agree with that. Tristan, do you have any other ones?
No, that was pretty much hit everything. The only other one left to talk about is Krampus, but I didn't do any research into that.
Yeah, we're not going to cover Krampus, and if you're listening, I'm sorry, but again, there's a lot of stuff out there. We wanted to cover some stuff that, like Belschnickel. I didn't know that much about Belschnickel, so thank you, Mark, for covering that. And then you too, Tristan. With I can't. What are their names again, Tristan? That you covered?
It's a Frau Perchta, and the other one's a little weird. I think it's Kilomantzari. Just make sure I got my pronunciation right there. That's weird. Kilocantzari are the little Greek demons.
The Greek demons to me were like something I had no idea about, and I'm really happy you brought it up.
Yes. Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, those guys were fun.
So, and then without all that being said, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on iTunes. What else can they find us on, Mark?
They can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. Basically, if it has a streaming platform, you can probably find us on there because we are on majority of them.
All right. Yeah, and then next week, or at the beginning of the year, we're probably not going to come out with anything next week because obviously it's the holiday. But the beginning of the year, we have a lot in store with a lot of mythology coming in January. So if you're listening, you got that to look forward to. February, we got a whole schedule planned out for all the listeners out there. So yeah, that's what we got. So this is the Abby Normals. End of transmission.